This is Ben Borg.
This is Katrina Borg.
This is Maggie Morgan. And this is the More Than Macros podcast.
There he is, Coach Tait.
Yeah. Bloody hell.
Long time, mate. How are ya?
Bloody good, mate.
It's good to see ya.
You too, man.
How
are you doing? Bloody great.
You've shared some exciting news in the last 24 hours, mate.
I know. Just so I can get it out there.
Public information now.
Yeah. I was like, I shared it with my email list a while back. I've got like 300 people on my email list, and I was just like, I'll just share it with them because I didn't really want to post it on Instagram or anything at that point. And then I was like, oh, why not? Because the baby's going to be here soon. It's going to be pretty obvious. You know what I mean?
So for anyone wondering what we're talking about, Coach Tait is expecting baby number 2.
Yeah, baby numero duo. And it's another girl.
Awesome.
So lots of estrogen in my household.
I'm sure you'll be fine, mate. I'm sure they're all lining up to take care of you.
Yeah, well, it's usually the other way around, unfortunately, mate.
For now, anyway, mate, but maybe not as you get a bit older.
Yes, that's the goal.
You don't have sisters, do you?
No, I've got 2 brothers.
Yeah.
Just payback.
So yeah, that's what happens. They move away.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Like
boys, yeah.
Away.
Yeah. But yeah, this is payback because my mum had to deal with 3 boys. And now I've got to deal with 2 girls, but I think maybe leave it at that. We'll see.
I mean, how far away are you?
3 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm nervous, man, because Olivia's just the most incredible person, but oh dear, she's bloody hard work, mate.
Yeah.
Just getting her in the fucking car seat, I'm just like, just sit down, please.
It's funny, you think all those struggles are unique to you and your own toddler, and then you hear someone else be like, I just can't get them into the car seat. It's like, oh, good, me either.
Yeah. And whenever I post a picture of Olivia, like with her shoes on the wrong feet, Morty will always reply. And he'll always be like, yeah, every time Luca's doing the same thing. So, but it's true. Like, you can sometimes think like it's just your kid because everyone just posts the good shit, on Instagram or whatever. And so sometimes you're just like, oh, why is my kid won't get in the fucking car seat? But it's everyone's bloody kid.
What's the age gap will be between Olivia and baby number 2? She's 3, yeah?
Yeah, she's 3 now, so 3.5 years.
So that means there's going to be another 18 months of fighting Mateo to get in the car seat, and I've got to look forward to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better.
No, it's annoying. It's so annoying. It's so annoying. And she's past the stage where it's like, where they do the hyperextension of the back and they like hips up, hyperextend the back so you can't physically. Yeah, you have to physically push their hips down into position so you can get them in. And then they cry the whole way to daycare. But now, no, she's just like, I want be monkey. And she's just like hanging from like the little bit where you hang your your shirt and stuff. Yeah. And she's like, Ooga, daddy, look. And I'm like, please just sit down. But counting to 3 trick works usually.
How do you, the old threat. How do you find, how's daycare? Does she like going to daycare?
Yeah, for the most part, she does.
All right.
Yeah, cool. I think she does more fun stuff there than she does at home.
Yeah.
So she does enjoy going, but sometimes it's like trying to get her in the door. So we get there and she can be a bit clingy, but usually she goes in. This morning she was adamant she takes her scooter from the trunk or the boot of the car, right? She's adamant she take the scooter and she scoots in from the car park into the daycare, and then she's like scooting around inside, and I'm like, please just give me the scooter back. so I can go home.
She's your problem now.
Yeah, exactly, mate.
That's good,
Similar
mate.
things with you and Matea.
Yeah, very similar. She like seems to have fun when she's at daycare, and definitely when you go to pick her up. Well, during COVID, we weren't allowed in the center. It was like pick up and drop off at the front door. And so now they're inviting us to go in, which is cool when you pick her up, because I just kind of watch for a while and she's like playing with other kids and having a good time. And then as soon as you kind of come in, all the kids look around at the door, and it's like this, like, whose parent is it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then she'll just like drop whatever she's doing and like runs up, and it's awesome. But she hates going. So like every day when we drop her off, it's like as soon as you slow down to turn into the street where daycare is, like she starts like whinging and whining, and then it's big tears. And then now that you go in the center, it's even worse, because she's really worked up as you like walk down the corridor. Like there's this impending. So
yeah,
she has fun when she's there, but it's like, oh, you feel sick. Like you feel sick, like leaving, and it's horrible. Like, oh, I've betrayed her. Like she's like, daddy, no, and just like, bye.
Yeah, I know it's horrible. Luckily, Olivia's doesn't get like that very much. But yeah, even if she's clingy at all, it's horrible leaving them like that, because you feel exactly like that. Like they're going to be like that all day, just crying there all day. But as soon as you're gone, they're like, okay, let's go play with the toys.
Exactly. It looks good. Like you said, like she's got more to do there than she's doing here, especially given we're both mostly working. It's a lot of just like, as bad as it sounds, like just trying to find stuff for her to do to like keep her quiet, but it's not necessarily like super engaging a lot of the time. So I think she gets more out of daycare. Weekends are a bit different. Obviously, we've got a bit more time and stuff like that. But it's we're in the midst of thinking and trying for number 2, and then she'll like have a day where she just throws a wobbler and be like, why are we sure we want to do this again? Like go through this like over again.
Yeah, I know.
I
know. I originally wanted 3. And now I'm just like, I don't know if I want 3 anymore.
I can now understand a lot more why people tend to have 2 and then like a 5 or 6 year gap and then have their 3rd. Like you just need to catch your breath. And then once you have 3, you're outnumbered, right?
Yeah, and you got to get a bigger car.
Bigger car, 4th bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I originally wanted 3, but honestly, I don't know. Again, like my younger brother is like 7 years younger than me.
Right.
Because I've got an older brother. Yeah, the real Ray Tait. I've got an older brother than me, and then my younger brother's 7 years younger than I am. So there's that 7-year gap. And it kind of makes sense. It's like do 2, it's like, oh man, I'm exhausted. And then it's like you have a break and it's like, oh man, you miss
you forget how hard it was. It probably is more likely what happens.
Yeah, well, it's all a blur for me now. It was only 3 years ago for Olivia, and it's all a blur.
Yeah.
So
have you found like trying to grow like the Coach Tater's branded business too? It's like almost having another baby, like the amount of like time and effort and work that like goes into it.
Yeah, it's really difficult to juggle everything as well. It's like I find trying to manage energy is really difficult. And it's like, because so much of what I do is posting on Instagram or YouTube, it's like I have to show up in a good mood, because no one wants to see some guy in a bad mood on like Instagram.
Maybe that could be your niche, is just like grumpy taters.
Yeah, maybe. But I think like there's some people that can pull it off, but usually those people are like Lane Norton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like he can pull it. Yeah, they can pull it off, because James Smith has got like a super thick skin. Anyone can come at him and he probably wouldn't care. Then you've got someone like Lane Norton, who can back everything up with like scientific research. And they've already got a big following.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if if it's someone with a small following that's trying to grow and you're just acting like a miserable see you next Tuesday, people are just going to be like, no, thanks, mate. I can't be dealing with that.
It's an interesting line that you try to walk, because you try to be genuine, but at the same time, you also then saying like, oh, I can't show that side, or like don't want to like talk about this, or like can't say anything or have an opinion that maybe you hold, but it might be perceived as like being controversial. So that's like the ultimate question is, well, how do you, and I think that's why someone like James Smith does so well. It's like, you know, it's chicken or the egg. Like, has he done really well because he is so genuine and he's willing to be like, well, this is just who I am, and you either agree with me or you don't, and I don't care? Or is it because he's playing, I don't know, a potential persona that is funny and relates? Like, how much of his persona that you understand from Instagram is he actually in real life, you know?
Yeah, I think he definitely plays on the persona, and I guess that's probably comes with practice as well.
Yeah.
And I think you do get better at being more polarizing. Like I noticed now that I'm less scared to be more polarizing than I was before. Like, I think last time I came on the podcast, I was trying to put content out, and I was going through this transition of had a personal account, you know, pandemic, lockdown, moved everything online, and you started using my personal Instagram as my business page. And understandably, it shifted from personal to business, and people unfollowed, got new followers, people came, people left. And it was, at first, it was difficult to deal with that, because I was like, oh, I think I've upset people, or I think people don't like me anymore. But you kind of just get used to that, and or I have anyway, kind of gotten used to that and just realized that not everyone wants to see the fitness stuff. Most of those people have kind of unfollowed me a long time ago anyway. Yeah. But being polarizing is definitely, it attracts more people. It definitely attracts a better tribe. And so it's difficult as well, because, you know, a lot of stuff with nutrition and training, so many questions that people ask, the answer is, well, it depends, you know?
Yeah.
And then you can go on to the nuance of certain things, but a lot of it does depend on the context of whatever the person is going through. And so it is difficult sometimes to be polarizing in that sense. But once you can be, and you can take a stance on something, generally you're going to attract more people. That's kind of what I found. And there's a lot of shit out there right now. Like, we've got, keto was hot for a long time, and I see that less so these days, but now it's carnivores, the big one, you know. Intermittent fasting's kind of come and it gone-ish, kind of. People are still asking about it, but I'd say carnivore's the big one right now, isn't it?
Are you seeing that a lot? Like, a lot of people coming in, and do they tend to say, oh, this is what I'm doing, or this is something that I want to try with some guidance? Or
I don't see many people asking me about it, but I don't really post about it. So people have asked my opinion on it, but I do just see it more so in the mainstream nutrition media, like on Joe Rogan, other people that have like pretty high following podcasts and such talk about like Liver King, for example. Like, he's got a huge following recently. You know, it's absolutely insane. And
he's so
it's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's absolutely mental, mate. He's a fucking massive guy, and he's claiming that he's not on the roids.
Yeah, claiming a naughty status, and always eating his bull testicles and fucking marrow.
Yeah, and claims that, like, if you eat like an organ,
it helps that organ.
Those, yeah. And so, like, part of me as well is like, well, if people are going to make claims like that, then I can fucking start standing up for some of the stuff that I actually believe in, that's actually common sense stuff. I think part of it as well is, like, I'm probably not the best person to be sifting through scientific research. I've got a good understanding of a lot of the stuff from different textbooks and courses and stuff, but to sit down and to read through a scientific research I'd get irritated at that.
Well, it's time too, right? Like it's inherently the problem when you're running your own business, and especially for yourself, where it is a bit of the one-man band. It's like, not only do you have to do the actual coaching and programming, but you're also trying to like be the social media guy and do like the back end, like finance and business running. And then you're also trying to stay super up to date with the enormous amount of research that's kind of coming out on a daily basis across the field. Like, I mean, we got a team of 5 and it's hard, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And at some point it gets to like at what point am I supposed to actually coach? Yeah. And I think that's kind of what we found over the journey is, it's like not enough that you're good at what you do as a nutritionist or as a personal trainer, because like you have to be able to do SEO on your website so that you poll well with Google, so that you can find new work, and you have to be constantly posting on 3 or 4 different social media platforms so that you stay. It's just like, at what point do I coach? And it's like wanting to stay up with research for obvious reasons, but even that at one point is like, and this is something that I like chatting with you about too, as much of the new research that comes in, the main fundamentals always remain the same. It's understanding energy balance and creating a necessary caloric surplus or deficit, and finding ways to do that are the most sustainable for the individual person. I think where a lot of it gets into trouble is people are trying to take what's optimal in a lab and then they try to apply it to like their life, where it's like, you're not living in a laboratory where you controlled for, all variables, right? You actually have life that comes in, and you've got kids and you're working and you're only training 3 times a week. So why are you trying to do Tia Toomey's volume? Like there's all these like considerations that a lot of the time, we just gloss over and think like, well, I have clients that think like, oh, I should be doing what they're doing, or I should be doing more, I should be doing this. And it's like, well, let's just be consistent doing one thing for 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 weeks before we try to make it even more difficult, right?
Yeah, totally. And I definitely underestimated the fact that people, like, my job isn't about giving people the optimum macros. Because for a long time when I first started, I was like, okay, great, I'm learning about macros to optimize like muscle growth. Can't wait to give people some of these that they can't follow. And it's like, it's not about the optimum macros on paper. It's about getting that person based on what they can adhere to, based on where they're meeting them where they're at, and maybe working on things like the basics, like improving or increasing protein intake gradually over time, as opposed to going full whack and, oh, you've barely eaten any protein for the last 3 years. Now you're going to go 180 grams a day, So I think I underestimated just how difficult it would be in that sense, to get people to follow and find something that's adherable for people. But yeah, I think it's got there. That's what your question was now.
I was just talking about trying to keep up with the science and everything else, and how much of it is actually directly applicable. Like, if I'm similar to you, when we first started, like, I think people would come to us and they'd be like, plant-based, and I'd be like, oh, that's stupid, like that, blah 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 blah. And I think more as I've gotten on, it's been more about like, okay, well, here's some information relating to something that you want to do. Whether you like, it's my job to provide you with the information, but what you choose to do personally is up to you. And if you're committed to wanting to be plant-based and you're happy with the pros and cons, then that's fine. We can work within those parameters. And even we haven't had it yet, but I think even if I had someone who was like dead set on doing carnivore, I think my approach would be like, well, let's make sure that we're kind of still getting these kind of things in place. But if you want to try it for 30 days just to see how you go and see how you feel, like, be my guest. But you can probably expect that, one, like you're probably not going to feel as good when you're working out with high intensity because you're not eating any carbohydrate. And two, you're probably going to end up feeling like you need to shit your pants at the drop of a hat because like that's what happens when you're pushing through with no fiber. And like those kind of I think ultimately it's interesting when someone's paying you for like your advice and your support and your opinion to then come in and say, but I want it to do like this, is kind of like, well, then why don't you just go and do it? Like, what do you need me for if you know already, if you know all the answers,
Yeah. I've had multiple people tell me the only way they can lose weight is on keto.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that you mentioned there about being plant-based is just setting the expectation. The expectation is it's going to be harder for you to get enough protein in than someone that's not plant-based.
Yeah.
And that may or may not affect your performance and recovery and your ability to gain muscle or even maintain muscle in a deficit.
Yeah.
And as long as you are, or we are as coaches, transparent about that, and we just give them the information there, then it is their choice to make. And we can give them the best guidance that we can based on what we know. And then they can roll with that. But yeah, I've definitely had people say, I can't lose weight unless I do keto.
Yeah.
And then it's trying to educate them. And it's difficult when people are so adamant. And again, it's like, well, why are you here? Why do you need me if you know already?
Yeah.
And it's out of frustration, I think, on their side. They're frustrated. They are having a difficult time usually controlling their social life. I find people have a difficult time controlling their social life, going out for social events, and they need something to be able to say no completely to carbohydrates.
Yeah.
In order to kind of get some momentum going. They need to have some rule in place in order for them to follow it through. Because if they can go out and they can say, right, I'm on keto, I need everything on the menu to be keto, they can keep going out and they can keep their social life, but just never eat carbohydrates.
Yeah. And then you boil it down, and really what you're saying is like, okay, well, you're snacking less, so your caloric intake is less. So that's, effectively what's helping.
Yeah.
Do you find those clients that tell you they need to do keto, they want to do keto, are actually doing keto? Or is it just like, I'm just throwing sticks of butter into everything, and then like, oh, we're having popcorn and we're like covering it in butter? And it's just like, or they're still drinking alcohol or whatever it is. And it's like, well, what do you actually mean by doing keto? Like, what does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I follow some of my clients on Instagram, and I probably shouldn't, because I'll scroll past their stories and I'm just like, oh man, it's like danger zone. I just don't say anything. It's like, they know if they ever swipe up and they can see who's seen the story and my face pops up, like they know, like. But it's like, the only way I can lose weight is keto. Yet they're out at a restaurant and they're drinking like alcohol and like doing all the rest of it. And it's like, man, you're eating out like 5 times a week. Just fucking stay in and have like, you can eat some cookies if you stay in. But yeah, like we both know that if you're losing weight through keto, it's because you've created a calorie deficit through doing that. It's you've used it as a tool. There's no like magic to that. Right. But yeah, I've had people as well with the butter in the coffee stuff.
Yeah.
Which is worrying because it's a lot of saturated fat. And that's something that plays on my mind a lot, because my dad had a heart attack about 10 years ago. I guess he was in his mid-60s. And I actually just ordered some blood work for me to go and have my blood lipids done. So I haven't had them done yet, but I'll let you know off air about those. But yeah, so my dad had a heart attack, and it was because buildup of plaque in the arteries. And so I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Spencer Nadolski, where he was talking about saturated fat and the carnivore diet, actually, and about atherosclerosis and how it builds up over time from a high saturated fat diet. And this is the thing with carnivore. It's like it's a relatively new diet that people are taking on like right now, like just eating meat without fiber and stuff, and people having a lot of saturated fat. And it's like, it could be fine. I don't know. Like, I really don't know, but I don't want to be the guinea pig to try it, because I know, based on common sense, how the world is, some of the most healthy populations in the world, and like most research that suggests this, like having a diet that's like high in vegetables and fiber is pretty good for you. Yeah. And so I don't want to be one of the guinea pigs, you know, and like we're living until in our 90s, you know what I mean? Queen Lizzie, 96, RIP, you know, we live until our fucking 90s, mate. It's like, we're eating pretty good. Like, I'm sure she had a Coke once or twice, you know what I
mean? Yeah, it is. It's, yeah, I think you're like, I think it's hard enough to just do the basics, let alone, and I think when you talk about what typical obstacles or hurdles tend to trip people up, it's you might be okay doing your keto or your carnivore Monday to Friday when you're at work and at home, and there's not much going on. But then, like, what happens when, you know, the invitation comes out to the social occasions, or like there's a family event or something like that? I think you might have a few weekends where you feel like, I'm going to take my own food to this social occasion, or I'm just going to order like the meat and that's it. But at some point, it's going to like continually build up. And one, either you're going to be that person in your social group that your friends are like, don't fucking invite them, because it's just a pain in the ass everywhere we go. And then we talk about the impact of like social network in terms of like your overall health and your stress management and stuff like that too, and your personal relationships and your mental health. But then, yeah, ultimately you're going to get to a point where it gets to like what we call like the fuck it moment, where you just like, you're going all nothing, all nothing, all nothing. And then once you're no longer completely all, there's no just like have the weekend and then get back on track. It's just like derailed. And then you go completely the other way. And hormonally, the response, and it tends to be where we start to see all that like yo-yo fluctuation. You know, it's either this supremely rigid approach or this like completely off the rails, you know. And most people struggle to be where we want them, in the middle, where it's like, you know, 80-20, like be on most of the time, enjoy your weekends, get back to program as soon as you can, get back onto, you know, eating sensibly as soon as you can. Like that's hard enough, you know.
Yeah.
Especially when you have kids, and then you start to have like tiny teddies and bloody
ice cream sandwiches,
little pretzels and stuff in the bloody cupboard. All of a sudden there's no meal prep, and you're like, one pack turns into 2 or 3 pretty quickly, which you don't track. And then you're like, oh man, like
I'm only eating 1,500 calories.
Yeah. So it's hard. And I think that's the thing that gets like misconstrued as well, is even with all the knowledge that you have or I have, it's still hard. You know, like you're much more aware that the decisions you're making either are aligned to what you're trying to progress towards or not. But that doesn't mean like in the moment that you just, you know, you don't just go for what's convenient, what's around, because you're tired or you're busy or you're stressed or whatever. You know, kids are sick, can't be bothered cooking, it's 8 o'clock at night. Like it happens to the best of us. You know?
Yeah. Well, I've got a few things to say. First one is, when we go off the rails, which we all do, right? Like we'll have a weekend off and we'll be a few pounds heavier the following week. That is significantly more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like exaggerated if you're on keto or carnivore, because of the lack of glycogen storage, right? So if you go off the rails on keto or carnivore, you are going to see a huge spike in body weight. And then it's even more like, oh shit, nothing's working for me or whatever. And then it's completely give up there. But I've seen with those kind of people, they'll stop, give up, they'll just continue on, but in their mind they'll still be thinking that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And they'll try and go back to that, and they'll do exactly the same thing over and over again. And then the other thing I had to say was a slightly different topic, and it's about how, you know, when like we're picking at food, or if we're stressed, we're trying to deal with like family situations. The way I see it is like we're all just trying to make improvements in the day-to-day. It's like that 1% better, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's our whole life. It's not like we know how to track macros, right? Again, doesn't mean it's easy for us to like not nibble at our kids' food, or, you know, like Lucy likes to have like tasty food in the house, like Haagen-Dazs ice creams in the freezer. Like if I open the freezer and I see that, and I'm just like, oh man, like I haven't eaten for a couple of hours. Scoop a little summit, you know. But I think of it as like a learning experience, and it's just an ongoing thing. It's like if you've had a stressful day or week, or you've had some shit going on where like you're dealing with some mental health struggles, and you've been eating a little bit more than you should, and you've not been making progress to your goal, you can look back, especially if you've been tracking, and you can say, how could I have improved something that's been going on?
Yeah.
And maybe it comes down to stress management, maybe it comes down to communication with your partner, maybe it comes down to like you weren't tracking everything, maybe you weren't planned in terms of your food prep. There's so many things that potentially you could improve. And this is just life, you know, things that happen that you're like, that shouldn't have happened like that.
Yeah.
How could I make it better next time?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the mindset that you go into and the language that you use around those things is super important as well. Like we steer really clear of talking about, you know, either being on program or off program, or, you know, cheat meals and things like that, right? And it's like, well, your diet should consist of things that you enjoy eating for no other reason than you simply just enjoy eating those things. And now the lesson becomes, how do I work those things into my diet and still be able to progress and not feel like I'm being bad or being guilty? Because if you, again, all or nothing, and then you do have a bit of a splurge or a binge, and then you sit there and feel guilty and remorseful and pissed off at yourself, like that is not going to then set you up to make better decisions following that decision, right? But if you know, I've got Tater's birthday on the weekend, probably going to have a few drinks and get dinner out. If I eat sensibly during the day, so I don't go into that situation super hungry because I've been starving myself. And if I know I'm going to have a couple of drinks so I can get to the grocery store before I'm hungover and get some meal prep done in advance, then it makes it much easier to enjoy yourself in the moment and then simply just like return to routine as soon as possible. Because what I find typically is the big weekend, what's done on the Saturday night is not necessarily where the damage is done. It's the big Saturday night that means you're hungover as anything on a Sunday. Typically the delivery apps are getting a big beating. You're also not getting to the grocery store, which means like there's probably no meal prep. That means you're scrambling Monday, Tuesday, maybe you catch up by Wednesday. You're now almost a week gone because of that one big night, you know? And that's kind of where the longer you are out of routine, the more that new routine is starting to become your routine, as opposed to kind of the structure and the system setup that we've been trying to work on up to that big night, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It is a difficult one, because I know as well, like if I have something that is, let's just say, high calorie dense, it's very tempting to have more, you know, and oftentimes I do have more. And sometimes I will go over my calorie target and eat at maintenance if I'm in a deficit or whatever. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh, you know, well, fuck it, I'll just keep going. I think it's natural, you know, to feel that way, and it takes work to get over that. But it really is thinking not of it as like at 12 o'clock midnight, it clicks back to zero. It doesn't work like that. It's just an ongoing, you know, It's like our bodies don't work like that. And so literally, it's not like you can just do it for the day and then not carry it into the next day or whatever. So I don't know. I think sometimes as well, if people have really good relationship with food and they know that they can just let it go for a day, usually those kind of people probably wouldn't feel guilty about it. They would just fucking get it done. And
yeah, I feel like very rarely are people that have that capability actually coming for nutrition coaching. Because I think that for a lot of my clients anyway, that's our goal, to get them to that point where like they're able to eat without apprehension, or they're able to enjoy themselves in the moment and then not worry about like having to do extra activity or trying to keep their calories low the next day. Like, you know, yeah, I'm someone who I track every day. I quite like the sense of control. It gives me structure, it keeps me accountable, but it's not necessarily the goal for all my clients to be at a point where they need to do the same thing. And if I can get them comfortable with knowing, like intuitively, you know, I think learning to trust what your body is telling you is something that's much more challenging for a lot of people. I think many people who have followed these restrictive diet patterns and things in the past, it's almost like you've become accustomed to not fearing hunger, but trying to ignore hunger. Or that being hungry is bad because that's going to lead you to overeat. When, especially if you're smashing yourself with activity, like it's your body's way of telling you, hey, like we need more fuel here. I need to recover, or for performance, for fuel. And it's learning to like trust in the signaling that like you might be on X amount of calories most days, and then one day every 2 weeks you just ravenously hungry, and being okay that it's like, it's just your body's just telling you, oh, probably just need a little bit more, have a little bit more, and then get back to it and see how you feel. But I think that is actually quite an advanced level, whether that be like a self-awareness level, or, you know, like developing a good relationship with food and a good relationship with your body. I think that's the end game for the majority of people. It's how do we get them there that is the biggest coaching questions. And whether we use macros, whether we're tracking with MFP, whether it's a lower carb or a higher fat approach, or whether it's eating windows and things like that for IF, it's just 1,000 different tools, but ultimately we're trying to get everyone to that same point, you know, where they feel confident in their body, happy with the way that they look, the way that they move, you know, and then from that point, if they decide they want to get a little bit stronger or a little bit leaner, it's a much easier journey, right? Mm-hmm. But it's when people have a toxic relationship with food, have very little ideas of self-worth, and emotional attachment and fear to the scale and what that says about them as a person or their character, that want to get leaner. That's when we start to really like, we need to prioritize a few things before we even get towards like discussing fat loss at this point.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel, or how do you approach that with someone that comes on that has that mindset, that's like that has all of those things going on, that wants to lose weight? Like, how do you approach that and tell them, I don't think that's right for you? Because understandably, they're going to be like, I want to lean into this and let's fucking go.
Yeah. The answer is very slowly, right? And I think that's where like the actual coaching, it took a long time for us to get to a point to understand that, you know, even the program that we're tailoring and customizing and creating, that's not actually what the client's paying for. They're paying for the coaching, the support, the accountability. And so even the program itself becomes just another tool that we're using to help get to this point. But it's the conversations that you're having with them, and it's the explanation, and it's providing them with knowledge. Like, you know, most people fear what they don't understand across the board, regardless of the topic that we're talking about. But for most people, they don't understand food. You know, they've got such a high level view of what's good, what's bad, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, most of which is just marketing more than it is actually kind of education or knowledge. So it's trying to, you know, work with them to develop a baseline knowledge and understanding. And then ultimately, over a period of time, initially, you know, if you get them just doing those basics and they start to feel better, noticeably feeling better in terms of energy or moving better or sleeping better, or there's some stress management tools going on as well, then they start to buy in. And then once they start to buy in and you've got, you know, that rapport and that trust building, now it's a little bit of like, you know, I understand this is going to be scary for you. I know you want to lose weight, and I'm talking about increasing your calories, but we're going to work through this together is kind of the approach, right? It's probably a conversation I have with younger coaches coming up in terms of like the skills that are most useful in this job, and kind of your understanding of nutritional knowledge and nutritional science is important, but it's not at the top. Like it depends on, I guess, like your chief demographic of client or athlete that you want to work with. Like, with Kat, the stuff that she went through when she did her masters, for all our athletes who are, enroll for trying to get to the games or wanting to lift it at high levels or be quite highly competitive from a recreation perspective, that in-depth knowledge that she got from her masters that the rest of us as coaches are benefiting from is incredible. But it's not super useful when you're working with someone who, despite all the information that you can give them that, this is how calories work, and this is prep cycle, and this is like, glucogenesis, and this, and it's like, but I'm scared to fucking eat anything because I'm terrified I'm going to put on more weight. And every time I step on the scale, I feel like I'm a failure, and kind of going down that rabbit hole, And so it's almost like, if you want to we're in a people business fundamentally, like your ability to communicate and work with people through some pretty like difficult stuff is probably, I find for the majority of my clients, probably the most thing that you can offer them is just like a safe place to soundboard and like put your fears out on the table, and let's work through which ones of those are rational and which ones of those are a little irrational, and can we dispel some of the issues around the irrational fears, because if generally we can reduce the amount of fear or anxiety that you have as a whole, you're going to feel a little bit better about it, and then start to maybe work through, some of those rational things. But a lot of times you feel like, I feel like I'm really riding the border here of like starting to go out of scope with some of the things that are coming up for this client. And probably as we've gotten a bit more experience, we feel a lot more comfortable saying, maybe we need to bring a third party in here. Maybe I'm happy to support you and be here for you and help you find someone but a lot of the issues that you're talking about, I'm not qualified to help you work through, And I think maybe, not that there's anything wrong with kind of developing self-awareness, but I think as coaches, we need to be careful that sometimes when we're asking clients to be mindful of what their rhetoric is, or maybe getting them to do some journaling, like sometimes then what comes out of those practices, we need to realize like, okay, this is something that requires like a bit of actual professional certified help here. It gets tough because a lot of people, when it comes to food, have these like feelings and thoughts and behaviors and traumas and experiences of when they were a kid, or what they saw their parents do, that stuck with them for whatever reason, and buried like right deep down inside. Or maybe they're starting to get more athletic as they get into CrossFit, but it's actually, you find out their motivation is that like at school they were like picked on or bullied for like not being super fit or super coordinated. And it's like, how do I deal, like how do I help you work through that? And at the same time too, sometimes you can get to a day after 5 or 6 client calls and you're emotionally exhausted because you're just kind of taking on everyone else's like emotional stuff to try to work through, I think it's super helpful for me, at least, to have Kat and another team, because you at least get someone that understands and can relate, that you can just debrief with a little bit and then just offload.
Yeah.
It's what else.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure like therapists need therapists, right? But yeah, I mean, my business is structured a little bit differently to yours because I don't do any calls as such. Like if people ask me to jump on a call, sometimes I will, or if I feel like something would be much quicker to resolve over the phone, then I'll suggest a call to my clients. But generally speaking, they just check in with me via email once a week, and then we'll have ongoing correspondence via email. And I can understand that for the clientele that has those struggles around things like being worried about what to eat, coming from the background of thinking good and bad foods, it would be much easier to deal with those kind of things on the call. But like you said, it can be difficult to manage your energy. And I think that's one of the reasons why I decided not to do calls, is because, man, I'm an introvert. And I don't know if you've seen the meme, and it's like Rocky is like warming up, or he's like, some guy's like lifting weights, and it says introverts getting ready for a phone call. Anyway, it's so funny. Yeah. And it's like, that's me. Like, I always do consultation calls. And if I have a consultation call booked, the whole morning, I'm not like super anxious or anything, but I'm just kind of on edge a little bit more, like, oh, am I going to click well with this person? Is it going to be awkward? Are they going to be like, is it going to flow well? Are they going to be a good fit for me? If they're not a good fit for me, am I going to be able to, assert that it's not the right fit? Because in the past, like with what we talked about just now, it's like, I've probably taken on some people in the past that I wasn't qualified to take on. And it's just out of our nature that we want to help everyone,
Yeah.
But realistically, they needed someone more qualified to help them. And so, yeah, for me, and that reason, I've just been trying to manage my energy as well, like with Olivia. If she's ever off from school, Lucy works, so I'm the one that has to kind of drop everything and take that. And so with that, I decided no calls. And most of my stuff is based more so around training, really. Yeah. I try and get people into training. Like, I do have some nutrition only clients, but I try and get people in to do training and nutrition together, really. And then with a goal of weight loss. Most people have a goal of weight loss, and then after that, maybe try and convince them to do a gaining phase. Because a gaining phase, sorry?
The big dirty bulk.
The dirty bulk, yeah, the dreamer bulk.
Dirty bulks are fun.
Yeah, I think like if you can get someone to be comfortable enough to go into a gaining phase, I know for me that it has been, and I've come from being chubby and kind of picked on a little bit at school for being chubby, and of course that kind of drives me. That's why I do this job, mate. Like, because of that, like I've been training so hard because of that. And so I do obviously have some insecurities there. I think a lot of people do, right? But so it's amazing to be the one in control of weight gain.
Yeah.
And to go through that process, and it's like, I am gaining weight and it's on purpose, and I'm in control, and I'm trying to limit the amount of fat that I gain. It's just completely shifts the whole idea of like, because people get caught up of like, they're always in a diet, whether they lose weight or not.
Correct.
Mentally, they're always in a calorie deficit, you know?
Yeah. It's, I completely, I think at the same time too, like similar to you, like that's also what makes you quite relatable to the majority of your clients, is like, I know what it's like to like be working to drop like 30, 35 kilos worth of weight. And once you've done that, realize that like, well, that's just the start. And now there's this trepidation of like, will I end up just reverting back and going back and undoing like everything that I've done to get there? But I think that makes you a bit more, it's personal training. Like it makes you a bit more personal. I remember when, not even remember when, there's always been sometimes like more so when we first started, but it's like you would go out with a couple of people like, and people that, oh, you're having a beer. Like, aren't you a nutritionist? It's like, yeah, but I'm a fucking person as well. Like, yeah, like it's not like I pretend to live this like, oh, I'm 100% at all times, always on it. It's like I have a social life, and I think that maybe even early on, I felt I had to play that persona. Like I couldn't go for burgers, or like I couldn't go out for drinks. Like what would that mean? What does that reflect on the brand that I'm trying to run if I'm doing that? But I think when you have unrealistic expectations of yourself, then ultimately clients feel like you're placing unrealistic expectations on them. And it actually makes you much less relatable to people rather than more relatable. You know, there'll be more clients that you're working with that can relate to, you've had a shit day, you get home, you order a pizza and you smash the whole thing without thinking twice, then can relate to like, oh, I'm stressed, but I'm just going to have more carrot sticks and broccoli. You know, like that's bullshit, right? And then we get even further into it when it's those same like expectations stuff that I think annoy me the most with people in the industry that sell supplements that are clearly taking PEDs. Like how, like you're holding up this like unrealistic kind of benchmark to say that, oh, if you work hard and you train hard and you take these supplements, like this is the physique that you can attain or achieve. I think we've been better recently in making our clients get a bit deeper into their goal setting and making sure that the goals they're setting are realistic. The expectations that they have of where they're going to be in certain timeframes is realistic, and very aware of the different challenges and obstacles that they face, because you're like wanting to be super jacked because you see like the CrossFit Games athletes super jacked. Well, if you're not training twice a day and you have a couple of kids who mean you're also not sleeping through the night at all ever, and you're working a day job, like it's an unrealistic paradigm to try to set up that you're going to be in a comparable position to someone who's also 10 or 15 years younger than you, right? So why are you trying to, you know, emulate that or be that? It's not a realistic expectation. And if you're aiming for something that you're constantly going to fall short of, how do you think that's going to make you feel about any effort that you put in at all, if it's all for in the end you feel like you're just constantly failing, right?
Yeah, and comparison is the thief of joy.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And so and it's hard not to compare yourself to other people, but you know, try your best to use them as inspiration, but not for comparison.
Yeah.
I think a good example of this is like, I was working out in my garage here for 6 months, my garage. I was working out at the garage here for about 6 months. And I was the best looking bloke in that garage.
Oh yeah.
You know, in that garage, I was in the best shape out of everyone there.
You
right?
lift the heaviest weights.
I was the strongest guy in the gym, right? I was the leanest. I was also the fattest, right? But like in that gym, I was in the best shape. Now I've just joined like 4 months ago. I would say like it's a semi-serious like bodybuilding style gym. It's a pretty like, it's not your Steve Nash or Fitness World type. I don't know what you would have, like a Fitness First maybe. Do you guys have Fitness First?
Yeah, like a 24/7 gym where you just kind of scan your key card and then you go.
Yeah, so it's not quite like that. It's the next level up of like people that are actually pretty serious. Some people there like compete in bodybuilding, and
Pyramid for anyone listening.
So I joined this gym.
Gold's
now,
Gym. Taters is training at Gold's Gym.
Not quite.
It's not West Coast Iron or something, is it?
No, it's not. But if I was closer to there, I would have joined that one. But this one's actually incredible. It's in Richmond. Yeah. Richmond Sport and Fitness it's called. And it's honestly been fantastic. And now I'm there and I'm not in the best shape, obviously, because there's so many people there that are competitive bodybuilders that they are super passionate about training. And I'm there and I'm just like, fuck, I've been fucking slacking on my shit, you know? And instead of me being like, oh, that guy is better looking than me or whatever, more tanned, you know, everyone is, never mind. You know, it's like, fuck yes, I'm going to fucking go home and I am going to track my macros, and like, I'm not going to eat the ice cream sandwich. Sometimes I do, obviously, but you know, it's like, use that as inspiration and not comparison. Like, you comparing yourself to someone that's at the CrossFit Games is honestly like ridiculous, because these guys are like professional athletes, and like you're at home with your kids and stuff, and it's like these people are blessed with the most amazing genetics, which is, not discrediting their hard work at all, but, they've been training for years and years and years on end. And really, you just got to focus on, improving yourself and just doing that daily. And I know it's not as easy as that when you're on social media.
It is as easy as that. It's just, or it's very simple, but it's not easy, right?
Yeah, it's as simple as that. Yeah, but it is difficult to stop comparing yourself to other people. I do it all the time. Like when people are driving Teslas and stuff.
And if you don't think you do it, it's generally the things that you're most judgmental of other people of and for that you are the most like insecure about yourself and worried other people are judging you for, whether that be like your physique or your weight or your numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think with CrossFit, it's interesting too, because you got a little one banging on the door. With CrossFit, it's interesting too, because it's only really 10 years or so ago where like the people that were going to the games were people that would be, doing classes. Like to get to regionals, you could do your 5 or 6 classes a day, maybe some additional extras, or maybe you've come in as like a college level athlete and there's a pretty good, and you could get to a pretty high level. And it kind of filtered down. Like it's not so much anymore maybe, but there was a time, even when I started CrossFit, when like every person that came in the door was like, I want to go to the games. And you're like, yeah, okay. Like, yeah, so do the rest of us,
Yeah.
And so I think that it's starting to mature as a sport, and it's growing as a sport where you are getting these phenomenally gifted athletes from all over the place that maybe their competitive football, their competitive swimming or triathlete careers have come to an end, and CrossFit, or you're getting the opposite where now it's been around long enough that your Mel O'Briens and your Haley Adams that have been able to focus on CrossFit since they were 10, 11 and 12, not try to learn how to snatch at 28, are coming up, and it's taking it to a different game, which is awesome to watch as like a spectator of the sport. But yeah, it's not fair to be like, oh, look at their trajectory, how come my trajectory isn't like that? Even with setting like a scale weight based goal, we see like a lot of clients come in and they'll have a number. It's usually arbitrary number. They just pick a number, and it's like, okay, well, let's go a bit deeper. Why that number? And you kind of get a bit deeper and a bit deeper and a bit deeper, and it's like, well, the last time I weighed that much, I was in college, like had no responsibility. And it's almost like this nostalgic feel of the lack of responsibility, the lack of pressure, the lack of stress is the feeling they're trying to get back to, that for whatever reason, they just associate with weighing that much. And it's like, okay, well, since then you've been doing resistance training 3, 4, 5 times a week over almost a decade. So do you think like you've put on no lean mass over the last 10 years that you would be willing to lose it all just to get back to that particular number on a scale? Yeah, people are interesting, man. We're interesting creatures. We're very interesting creatures.
Yeah, totally. We are. And
sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that I see that too with people trying to get back to a weight where they were at college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have training partners, or are you training on your own for the most part?
Right now, I mostly train on my own. Sometimes my friend Sunny will come and train with me, but honestly, I was actually just talking to my therapist about this morning. By the way, highly recommend speaking to a therapist. Absolute legend, my guy. I was talking to him about this because
I give him a plug.
No.
Dr.
He
Phil.
can remain anonymous. But at Dynasty, I was there coaching classes, and I pretty much knew everyone there that was a member while I was there coaching classes.
Yeah.
And then even when I was still training there but wasn't coaching classes anymore, I would still know the majority of the people there. And so I was never in a position where I didn't have anyone to talk to. And in fact, a lot of the time, the reason why I stopped training there was because I couldn't really have a workout.
Yeah.
Because everyone kept coming to talk to me, and I like to talk. So, it would just take 2 or 3 hours to get through a 45-minute workout. Yeah. So I decided to work out from home and then, join this gym. But now I don't really know anyone there. And it is a different vibe to a class setting. You know, everyone's got their headphones in. You know, you say something to someone like, oh, using this machine, or how many sets you got left, and it's like, oh, what? And that's just the vibe it is. But it would be nice to be able to, you know, speak to people there, introduce myself, and just get to know people and just say hello, you know, good morning to a few more people. Like, I do have one friend there, legend, this guy. Yeah, super nice.
I don't know his name. Just give the old nod when you head in here again.
I think his name's Camille, but he's got like a nickname that's slightly different. So it's confusing. But anyway, yeah, so it would be nice to be able to get to know more people and then maybe train. But then it's like, I'm so set in my ways with when I follow a training program, it's annoying to deviate away from my program.
Yeah.
You know, but I think I need to be a bit more flexible with that. So I was thinking about, I know some guys that do train at West Coast Iron. I've never actually met them, but we're friends from like Instagram, or I know one of their brothers. And I was thinking about just inviting them down to come and train, and maybe recording like a little YouTube video or something.
Yeah.
And I actually had a conversation with, I think she's the owner's brother, the owner's sister. Sorry, I think she's the owner's sister. I might do some personal training at this gym. So maybe I'll get to know some more people that way.
Yeah, and then you repeat the problem, and then you have to leave again because then you know too many people, and it goes on and goes on.
yeah, that's the thing.
Do you miss CrossFit ever? Do you ever, like, you were pretty, like, you were very decent CrossFitter, a very decent level, and then I don't know if you felt you just got to a point where you like fell out of love with it, or if it was just like too demanding and too time consuming, or if you just wanted to focus on getting bigger for an 8-week block that's just turned into 3 or 4 years, or?
Yeah, good question, man. Good question. I kind of I knew that Olivia was going to be born because I had the last competition, which was 2019, I suppose, at the Can West Games. Yeah. Which I did with Max and Taff. And I knew that was going to be my last competition. And then I think I did like 1 or 2 workouts in the gym after that of CrossFit. And I pretty much knew that I was going to take a break at that point. And I didn't really know what I was going to do afterwards, but I kind of just wanted to focus on something more on my career, because for so many years I was going to the gym, and maybe a lot of your listeners will relate to this, because I was pretty good, but like, let's just wait. Let me rewind that a sec. I mean, I was
you're a very, very decent athlete.
I think like I was, for a while, like I was the best person in the gym for a while, like 2016, 2017. And I think my best finish in the open was like top 5%. So I'm not by no way near games or even regionals or anything like that. But this is the thing. I was good in terms of the gym.
Yeah.
And I would train for like 2 or 3 hours. And okay, some of that was procrastination, dawdling, and whatever.
Rolling out, TheraBands.
Yeah, all the stuff, 2 or 3 hours. And, you know, I was earning, you know, not very much money coaching classes. Okay, it's a great job helping people. But it just really, unless you are packed full of classes and PT clients, you're just not going to be able to earn enough to live in Vancouver. Yeah. And so there was a point where it's like Olivia was on the horizon, and I was like, I need to change this, and I need to focus on my career. And I didn't really want to be coaching CrossFit in a remote setting. I wanted to get back to basics because I wanted it to be more body composition related, really, because that's mostly my journey, I suppose, or what's got me into fitness initially. Yeah. You know, losing weight, building confidence. I don't think without training, I don't think I would have had the confidence to, you know, get myself out there, meet Lucy, and have a family. So So yeah, I mean that's the real reason, because I was just spending so much time in the gym to be the best in the gym, if that, for 2 or 3 hours a day, killing myself. My shoulder was hurting, you know, like why?
Yeah.
Why? And now, like, I do miss it. There is elements I do. Like, I miss the camaraderie, like some of the workouts that we all had together, and like finishing like the workout laying on the floor, like, oh my God, that was fucking horrible. But like, it's so nice now. I can get my workout done an hour, an hour and a half if I dick around. And I don't have any pain. I've got no pain. And it feels great.
Must be all the carnivore diet you've been doing. No inflammation.
That's right. No, yeah, got no inflammation at all. So yeah, that's kind of why I took a step back, and I don't miss it enough to do it again.
Fair enough.
I think part of it is I know it would be horrible to reintroduce it.
Do you think that you would get back and I don't know, do Fran and then realize like, fuck, it's like 2 minutes slower than it used to be over a 4-minute workout, and just be like,
Mate,
I'm so far away? Do you think that would just be disheartening? Is that kind of part of the...
I think my Fran time was 2:35 or something.
Gross.
So for me to get Fran in 4:35, if I was to do that now, I'd be very happy with that.
Yeah.
So I think if I was to try and do Fran, I'd be happy with under 10 minutes right now.
You reckon you could still bust out a ring muscle up if you had a pair of rings? See a pair of rings at West Coast time, I'll just jump up and do a couple of ring muscle ups.
No, I wouldn't dare, because it's all about saving face. Because it's like I was doing some snatches and clean and jerks, and like I was like, okay, I just kind of want to build up to something relatively heavy, because I've been playing around with that this week. I had a bit of a shitty week last week, and I was like, I just want to have a bit of fun. I do kind of miss weightlifting. I was like, I'm going to throw around some snatches, some clean and jerks, play around. And it's kind of busy in this area. And I was like, I'll build up to something moderately heavy, but don't fucking fail, because if you fail, you're just going to look like a fucking twat. So you got to save face, man.
Nah, just chuck extra 20s on and fail. If you're going to fail, you may as well fail 120 snatch rather than like a 75 snatch.
Yeah, you get it off the floor.
Correct. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like those are, I remember starting CrossFit and being at the gym, and it was like chasing taters. It's like, and I think sometimes too, like there's pressure that comes with like being that person in the gym too. And especially when you work there, I know even at working at Blackburn, maybe not so much now because I've got no knees, but it's like you go in there and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling super good. I'll just go for the class. And then once you're in there, you just feel like there's eyes on you, see what you're lifting, see how fast you're moving. And then like, members like smell that maybe they can catch you. And it's like, you feel like a little bit of pressure building up, and then probably you realize actually no one's thinking that. You just think they're thinking that. No one gives a shit about anything else except what they're doing. But
I was super competitive as well, and it just wasn't good, because it's like I'm coaching people that could potentially have beaten my time, and I'm trying to encourage them, which I was.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm like, fuck you. If you beat me, I'm going to kick your teeth in. No, not quite like that. But like, in my head, I'm like, I don't want you to beat me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm like, keep going. Yeah, keep going. So it was kind of it was kind of weird feeling that way. And it was like, it wasn't a good feeling to have that. Like, I'm there to support them, but I care so much about my time.
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah.
And it's
Kat and I we started at the start of the year doing Jiu Jitsu, right? And like it's actually been really nice to be in an environment where it's like you're a complete beginner, like you have no idea what's going on, you ask like 1,000 questions and you're completely shit at it. It's quite nice to have that sort of like new challenge. And ultimately for Kat and I too, it's like an hour that we spend like just the two of us and whatever, which is a really big part of it as well. But it's funny being on the other side, like when you coaching CrossFit or PTing, you know, and you have people that are coming to you that have zero experience, and you're like how do you move like that? Like how people squat and it's like everything's going every which way direction. It's like, how do you sit down and stand up, like in general? But then to have the shoe on the other foot and you just be like, this guy must think I'm like the biggest muppet. Like I just cannot get the hang of this. Or my body doesn't bend that way.
Yeah.
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 But it's
absolutely
quite
humbled.
yeah, and I think it's important as you get more established in your career, and you know we've both been in this industry a long time. That I would never position myself necessarily as an expert, but I think I have a pretty good working knowledge and depth of knowledge of how things work and how to get people from A to B. And then to all of a sudden, you know, it's like realizing like outside of your little niche, like you are still just this tiny fish in this big ocean. And I think it's really good for character development and everything else to realize that at any time you can be completely humbled and start again. You know, you're forced to start again. So
Yeah. I actually considered joining a jiu-jitsu gym around here as well. I haven't done it yet. And I actually got a gi from when I was much smaller and I lived in the UK, like more petite. But I never actually followed through. I went to like one class, got my ass fucking handed to me, didn't go back. And but I'm thinking about like doing it here. But again, it's just about finding time. Like we don't have the family to take the kids right now so that Lucy and I could go together or anything. And plus, you know, when would I do it? It'd have to take 2 workouts a day at some days. And I don't know if I can do that just yet, but it's definitely something that I would like to do. And it would definitely be something that I would like Olivia to potentially get into.
Yeah. So you look at, I don't know, and probably nothing that our parents did, but the way that we look at sport, I think being like in the industry and like the direction that you want to push your kids into to make them like, not this like super athletes, but quite well-rounded, like from a fitness and strength point of view, is really interesting. We're the same, like, yeah, get her on the mats, get her into gymnastics, get a tennis racket into her hand, make her go to swimming, like all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it all comes back to being a parent. And then part of when you're working with clients, it's like the same thing, you know, it's like you're taking someone who's like unmolded and raw and fresh, and you're like best trying to guide them through like this journey that they're on without, you know, you have to let them fail and you have to let them like build resilience and struggle from time to time and make sure they're always kind of reaching, and sometimes they'll fall short and it's hard when they get upset because they, you know, and it's like, this is just part of it. Like you have to learn to fail and fail hard and fail quickly and get back on the horse. It's exactly the same thing that you would do with Olivia or I would do with Mateo. So the parallels are humongous and numerous.
Yeah, totally, mate.
Yeah. Well, lovely, mate.
Bloody loved it, mate.
Thank you for sitting down with me.
Yeah, dude. Thanks so much for having me on. That was lovely.
Should we do the customary? We should do this more often, and then I'll chat to you in another like 8 months.
3 years. Yeah, we'll do it weekly. Definitely going to do it weekly.
Correct. Maybe a few more offline chats, mate, in the coming months. But yeah, if I don't speak, best of luck with the new one. I'll keep my ears out and eyes open.
Thank you.
Maybe the next one you can tell us about how going from 1 to 2 is not as hard as going from 0 to 1. So I feel much better about the future as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the case anyway.
Thank you, Coach Taters.
Cheers, mate.